workshop for all the lutes. You can see it's a big face today. Okay. So my name is Cheng. I play the Chinese lute, which is a 4-stringed lute. Yeah. This instrument has a history about 2,000 years, stretches 2,000 years ago, and it has a very interesting background of actually interculture. Actually, this instrument come along through the Silk Road. In about 3rd or 4th century Chinese, or even in the Han Dynasty, China started the Silk Road route. We trade from west, West China to all the way through to Xinjiang, yeah, Uyghur, and then to Kazakhstan, and all the way to Turkey, to Middle East, and even reach to Europe. So, yeah. Chinese pipa, when it first came to China, it didn't look like this. They hold more or less horizontally, play with a large plectrum, and also the strings were made of silk. And when it first came to China, you can only see the 4 big wedged frets on the top. Actually here, nothing. And the head obviously is very much like Middle East wood, like it has this 90-degree backwards head. In the course of 2,000 years ago, so now it's developed a new version of pipa. This is since early 20th century. It's become like this. So we have a lot more frets added onto the body, and the plucking method with plectrum has been replaced with finger plucking. So I'm wearing the artificial fingernails to accommodate both the modern strings. Yeah, the pipa has 4 contrasting styles. The most typical is the civil against the martial. Still, this is reflection of Chinese philosophy of yin and yang, because yin is reflect of the beauty of softness, gentleness, and yang is the powerful, the martial style. So it can reflect very powerful, historical, traumatic events, like one song is called Ambush from 10 Sides. So I'm going to demonstrate you a bit of civil style. Mainly the technique concentrate from left hand. Yeah. So this piece called very short excerpt. Flute and drum and sunset. Just see how my left hand decorates the melodies. Yeah. martial arts style. There's a piece very famous for the martial style called Ambushed from All Sides. So basically it's describe a battle through one piece. So you can hear the sound of the weapon clashing, the horse neighing, the calling the roosters, the big battles and skirmish, ambush, and all those sound. So I'm gonna show you a few bits. And this bit is the beginning of the drum beating. So like all ancient battles, so you need to boost the spirits of the soldiers. So you playing drums to boost that atmosphere. So bit of like here, this is a little skirmish. Special technique about pipa is the tremolos, which is everything different from Western guitar plucking technique. We actually go all the way outward with both fingers, make a melodic line. Come to the Uyghur instruments.
Hello everyone, my name is Shohret Nur. I am Uyghur. This is our traditional instrument, dutar. It has 2 strings, and traditionally dutar has 17 frets, but my dutar more than 22 because I like to play a solo. It's made from mulberry wood, and the tune is G and D. The fret is like yes. I learned dutar from my grandma. My grandmother learned dutar her father. Like, so this is our family instrument. I will show you the simple. Dutar played with the right hand, like with the finger. Sometimes 4, sometimes index, palm, and these 2 together. Depends on the music. So I will show you the basic example for the right hand. 4 finger and this thumb together. Another technique, 4 finger, thumb, and index. dance technique with the same piece.
I'm here to present the Kazakh dombra to you. I am myself not Kazakh, I'm German. I lived a few years in Kazakhstan and I learned the instrument. The Kazakh dombra really epitomizes Kazakh culture, musical culture very closely, and is closely linked to its Kazakh national identity. There are two types of dombra. There are many types of dombras, but largely they fall into two categories. The West Kazakhstani dombra like this one, and I have a picture of East Kazakhstani. They're a little bit square. You can give this round to the moon. Square and long, they're a little bit shorter. Kazakh dombra playing is really divided into largely two schools, West Kazakhstani and East Kazakhstan. West Kazakhstan is, like the dutar, is really epitomized by quite rhythmic strumming, and the melodies then get played in the top or the bottom string, and they can alternate. West Kazakhstani dombra playing is much more characterized by using clicks and fingers on the fingerboard. But perhaps I should first tell you more about the instrument itself. Like the dutar, it's made from, I think in this case, 9 different pieces of wood. The wood traditionally is Kazakh spruce, which grows all around the Caspian Sea, Caspian spruce, Caspian Sea, and up into the foothills of the Tian Shan Mountains near Almaty. Kazakhs say that it is very important to know the tree that the instrument is made from, and there's a little saying that I have translated. It's not superb, but it says, there is a cunning tree in my hand, and it is a talking tree, because it is the drum that I'm carrying. And the other saying that I apply to myself quite often is, Kazakh isn't Kazakh, Kazakh is dombra. And that is definitely, if you ever visit the country, something you will find across the country. People mention this instrument. Not everybody plays it, but it is very, very important in the national psyche. It is shamanic in origin. Like you said, the origin of all the lutes is somewhere out there in Central Asia. There's ancient evidence in petroglyphs that you can admire in Almaty, where there's little figures and little cute dombra figures. Now, closely associated with dombra playing is the art form, and it's called a kui. And kui is a relatively short narrative, descriptive piece of music. It is usually tripartite. The melody and the bass rhythm is always played in the lower register. Then there's a middle register, which has a lower and a higher part, and then there's a high register. Now, I'm going to use a kui by Kazakhstan's most famous composer called Kurmangazy, to sort of demonstrate a little bit of how that works. And then later, when we play in the concert, there will be 3 kui that are built up like that. This kui is called Alatau. It means colorful mountain. And I'll just play short bits. It's a 5/8, so it will be throughout the piece. And then there comes, in the middle part is usually a bit of a melody that repeats itself, a little bit like in Western music where you get a development and sort of working through. To remind you of the original tuning. And now, in contrast, I know a tiny little bit. I'm actually not so good with the Eastern Kazakhstani, but in contrast how the technique goes with the fingers, there's a lot of clicking and string sort of strumming, and it goes a little bit like this. You cannot think of dombra without thinking of kui, because kui encompasses everything. These pieces, sort of, you have to see them as a whole thing. You can't just sort of dissect it and say, oh, this is the river, this is the color. No, it is a whole philosophy. So in each piece, you have to sort of listen out to the bit that is the inner psyche of each piece. That's me.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Antonio. I'm from South Spain, but I'm playing percussion from the Middle East for some reason. Yes, there are so many, I love talking. There are so many things I would love to talk about. But considering I'm here just to talk about the percussion, so I will try to stick to the percussion topic. So, yes, so I guess maybe most of you are very familiar with this instrument. So this instrument is called darbuka. Well, this particular darbuka is called dohola because dohola is basically a big darbuka. So usually the darbuka is a bit smaller than this, but basically it's a big darbuka from clay and calf skin. So this is the main percussion instrument in all the countries from the Middle East, also Morocco, which is very close to my hometown because I'm from the very, very south of Spain. So sometimes you are going to the beach and you can't even see Morocco. You know, so I don't know, I guess maybe that's why I also feel, I don't know, close to this percussion. That's it. So back in the days, this instrument was, used to be just like an instrument for accompanying someone else, a singer, a sax player, a wood player, something like that. But maybe the last 20 or 25 years, some brave musician people decide to change the rules about this instrument and about many other things, but we are now talking about the instrument. So there is a great, amazing Turkish percussionist who he just grabbed all the ideas and rudiments from the Indian tabla. So I guess as some of you are familiar with the Indian tabla, you have to drum and you play the tabla. So this Turkish musician, Mr. Ahmet, so he decided to move all that rudiment and transfer onto the darbuka. So he created a new technique, a new sound, I don't know, eventually a new music. It's amazing what he did with this instrument. No? I will play a bit for you, but also maybe before doing so, I can also talk about this. So this is very tricky talking about this specific instrument because every country around the world has its own version, you know. We have one in Spain, in Turkey, even in India, but the Indian one is, I think, this is wood, but the Indian one is metal. Everywhere, every single country around the world has its own version of this. So, I don't know what I can say because I don't know. You can play whatever with this. I will show you in a minute. That's it. So so back in the days, as I was saying before, so with the darbuka used to be like an accompanying instrument. So you used to play something like a very basic. Not basic, but basic. Something like that. And then you have a good player, a singer. But thanks to Ahmed and a few other musicians, so they brought all this crazy technique from the Indian tabla, gata, and also kanjira. So they created this kind of sound. So basically, everything started with a triplet. On the tabla, you are playing a triplet: 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. This is just a triplet. But in the darbuka sounds like that. So this triplet, this silly thing, was the beginning of a new universe for this instrument. So you still have the basic sound, but now you also have the triplet. important that we keep in mind that eventually this is just a piece of plastic. It's just a piece of plastic, literally. And this is just some calf skin, unfortunately. So the magic, I'm not saying I'm making magic. Hopefully I did some, that's not the whole point. What I'm trying to say that music should definitely come from inside. Otherwise, if we are too focused on the instrument, we are not focused on the music. Because again, eventually, this is just a bit of plastic, clay, so I think it's very important that we are able to connect with whatever we have inside, and bring and share it with the audience. Because I think that eventually that for me, I don't know, the mission of the artist or musician or whoever. And that's it. Thank you for being here.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ozan Baysal from Turkey, and I'm here to introduce you my instrument. This is Anatolian baglama or saz. We have different sizes and types of this instrument. It has sometimes longer neck, shorter neck, or maybe the bowl is smaller or bigger. And we name each instrument differently. The smallest one we say jura. And this is short-necked baglama, and we have long-necked as well. And also divan, which is the largest one. We have two main types of performing techniques. The one is with using of plectrum, and the second one we use just the finger techniques, finger playings. I would love to give some short instances. The first one, let's try with a pick. I will play same basic tune for each types of technique. This is a song from the Eastern Anatolia. This is the performance technique with pick, and we use this size of pick. Actually, playing saz with pick is not an old tradition. It has been developed during the 20th century, actually. But much before that, baglama players in tradition were just using their bare hands. And as the dutar and dombra techniques, we use strumming. In this very similar types of right hand techniques. So let me exemplify. We have also some plucking techniques. And one of the most unique techniques with the finger playing is actually tapping. We say parmak vurma. It is seen traditionally only in the southwestern of Anatolia, and they use the right hand and left hand taps simultaneously with hammers on and pulling offs. Lofving is very attached to a tradition we called ashik. Ashik literally means minstrel. And it's based on oral tradition, so the words are so important. So the saz or baglama is a type of accompaniment instrument to the words. But of course, in recent centuries, performers also developed the instrumental repertoire as well. And all this music based on the makam tradition, Turkish makams. Unlike autonomous makam, it is a little bit more simplified. We have less frets and quarter tones than the autonomous music. And baglama or saz is also very important for Alevi community in Turkey. This is another belief system than Islam, but it is a little bit interrelated. And baglama is very important for the religious practice in Cemevi. And they do their rituals with the baglama music as well. And there's always a holy figure we call Zakir, who plays saz in this jam. So most of our repertoire comes from these ritualistic traditions and also the ashik tradition as well. Thank you so much.
Hi everyone, my name is Leventis. You can call me Nick though, because I am an oud player and I'm of Greek descent, which I think often surprises people because they think, how does the Arabic lute end up in effectively European hands? And I think that sums up how difficult it is to explain the history of this instrument, because it's thousands of years old and no one really knows where it came from. There's a lot of debate, there's a lot of argument. What we vaguely know is that this instrument began as basically the same shape it is now, but with a skin top, somewhere around Iran, Central Asia, under the name, I believe it was gambus at some point, or barbat. And then at some point it gets changed to a wooden top, adopted by the Arabs, and takes on the name al-oud, which literally means wood. Conveniently.
Made of wood.
Exactly. So I think the interesting connection here is that we're at the Lute Society, and the etymology of lute is from al-oud, which became la-oud as it transferred into Europe through Spain with the Moorish invasions, and I think there was also roots through Italy at one point with the Arab occupation of Sicily, so the oud sort of moves up, becomes la-oud, which became laut, which eventually becomes lute, which is how we know it now. But what makes this instrument special is that it's fretless, and it's tuned in fourths. And what this allows us to do in our musical traditions is play these microtones. And they are extremely specific, and you really have to develop an ear to hear the difference. And I remember my first lessons where there is what's called a comma difference, which must be like 20 cents maybe. But it's a noticeable enough difference that the pitch can be given a new name. So the oud is built around this, or the way we play it is built around sort of expressing these flavors of music theory that we then build into larger compositions. And they're what gives the instrument its sound and its character. I will demonstrate that in a second. I also just want to say what we play it with. You'll notice I'm holding this plastic stick. So Arabs call this arisha, which means feather. In Turkey and basically everywhere else, they'll call it mizrap, which I'm not sure what that means.
Persian.
Yeah?
Yes, Persian.
Traditionally, this would be an eagle's feather that you soak in olive oil for 2 weeks till it goes flexible and remove the feathers from. But obviously, there are no eagles for me to do that to, and it's probably illegal. So plastic will do for now. And you sort of pinch it between your thumb and forefinger and grip it like this, and you can play quite percussively. There are other techniques that I've seen sort of Greeks and some Kurdish players play where they will hold the pick sort of like this. It makes it a bit more flexible and it's a bit more plinky sounding. But I find it really difficult and I don't know why they do it. So yeah, so that's the bare basics. So if you want to really highlight the sort of fretless nature of this instrument, I guess the best way to do it is with a bit of makam and demonstrating the fact that you can slide. We're not limited by frets, so we can bend our intonation to create a mood. So I will show you a little bit. If we think about every Middle Eastern scene in a movie ever, you'll always hear this sound, right? Right, this is called the Hijaz flavor. And within the Hijaz flavor, we have a naturally tuned third. Can anyone hear that harmonic? So that is like the purest third. You can't really get that on a guitar or a piano. You can do it on your lutes if you move your frets to tune it. And then we have our second degree, which is slightly sharper than sort of a generic flattened second. And then what we can do is we can stack other flavors on top of that. So if we take a sort of more major flavor, known as rust, we can bind them together and we get the Makam Hijaz. And then we can sort of move through this and bend these notes in order to create the character, and you will feel what it feels like. Down to centers. So in one makam known as ushak, which is this, the second degree is allowed to slide in order to drag it and pull your ear to the center of the root effectively. Turkish style, it's more of an Arab thing, and we wouldn't really play with it consistently. I think an Arab player would use this more to mimic the voice in order to keep the notes sustaining, because our instrument is quite percussive sounding. But further west, we use it more as a sort of flavor to add just texture to the sound, you know. To the lute.
My name is Johan, and it's quite unusual for the theorbo player to have the least interesting and but yeah, I'm getting used to it gradually. It's does anyone here play the theorbo? How many plays the theorbo here? Yeah, a few. Yeah. What I find very, very wonderful to be part of this kind of band is that you sort of get out of this. It's nice to have this kind of interest in what is the uniqueness of your own instrument and to kind of investigate special colors and techniques. But then when you sort of get to take a step back and you see how plucked instruments throughout the world have developed for thousands of years, you kind of get very humble and you sort of realize how much all different types of music making has in common. And I think what is interesting though about the theorbo, as opposed to maybe many other European lutes, is that it was somehow an actual invention. Of course, it was also developing, but what we heard about the pipa, for instance, it sort of develops through thousands of years, and then there is a sort of modern version being created. Well, the theorbo was sort of a modern version of a lute being created in the 1580s, and which then disappeared, and which we then today have sort of resurrected, without having so much more than written sources to base our playing styles and sort of aesthetic on. I think so many of you will know more about the details of the theorbo's history compared to me, so I don't want to say too much, but to just sort of give the very general background. People then, especially in this Florentine circle of Count Bardi and all the humanists who wanted to recreate the true ancient Greek tragedy and ways of accompanying the voice, started to experiment with the lutes they had. And they turned to the bass lute, they tried to tune the strings higher, get more sound, more power. The strings broke as the instrument got larger, and then they came up with this idea of simply tuning down the two top strings. And that's of course why the theorbo has this very, very characteristic way of spreading the chords, and which also explains why composers like Kapsberger, for instance, specifies these very, very special techniques, because if you want to end up with the highest pitch on top, you have no choice but to kind of reorganize your fingers a bit. You'll recognize this tune probably. And it's a very kind of very, very special quality of the theorbo. Of course, the theorbo was particularly developed to support the voice. I'm not going to sing because that's really not a good idea. But accompanying the voice with simple chords. After all, we don't have as big range as people may think, because the reentrant tuning means that if I want to play this kind of G major chord, I have to go all the way up here, and very soon I will run out of notes. But instead, we have several unisons that creates a lot of color and a very, very rich middle and lower register, which means that if you play with a singer or a flute or a violin, you can do quite a lot without actually being in their way. So, if I play just a few chords, you hear the sort of richness of the sound, and if someone that has a tune, I don't really need to touch those notes, which makes it a very, very effective instrument in that setting. When you have this tuning, the reentrant tuning, another very important feature, especially in solo playing, is the campanella, as we call it, when the various strings can kind of blend into one another. So if I would play a normal scale like a lute or a guitar would do, say you play, and here we can do, and this is something that makes the theorbo very, very interesting, both as a solo instrument, but also it makes that it kind of makes up for all the notes you can't play when you play with others. So the fact I can't always play these very large chords means that instead, if you just play, sit down, if you just play just one line, it's like just playing a little scale like that has built-in polyphony. Maybe you don't think so, but I think so. And it means that you can very often, which I've noticed in ensemble settings, you wonder sometimes when you realize you can't play all the chords, and you think, what am I going to do now? And you and my wife, the flautist, she always says, no, but just play the bass line, just play the bass line, don't play any chords. And I'm like, no, I have to play chords. But actually, just by playing sometimes one line, you can, I hate to admit that less is more sometimes, but it's actually true when it comes to the way you can get the most out of the theorbo. And this is something that also maybe inspired later theorbo players, sort of in the early 18th century to, if I remember right, actually some of the theorbo players were the first to specify this, that came to be known as the rule of the octave, this kind of tool for practical music making in using figured bass and actually creating through partimenti and so on compositions from your instrument. And I thought maybe I can just demonstrate a little bit what you can do with, say if I use my low bass notes, so I just play one low bass note at a time, and then I make some tiny little random improvisation on that harmony, and we see roughly what happens. That's the sort of basics of the theorbo, I think.
Very, very beautiful. For me, it's the first time I heard an introduction of theorbo.
Oh, yeah.
Really interesting. Yeah, we still have some time, so...
Yes, you've got a bit of time. You could play us a tune. Or
Yeah.
yes, that would be very nice.
Should we play some tune together?
Yep. This is just a taster for the concert.
Could you say a little bit about this instrument?
Oh,
Yes.
Oh yeah, this is one instrument we haven't
Yeah.
used.
this is rawap. Rawap, yeah. It has 7 strings. This is a snake skin,
Yeah.
and this is horn and made strawberry wood. Yeah. This is the basic pipa. Some right hand technique like. Kind of. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have 2 more instruments upstairs.
Can I stop you 1 moment? I'm going to reset the sound level for when you all play together.
Okay.
Sorry about this.
We'll try to play a piece together, and we hardly any rehearse. So we're just going to do some tunes based on the Turkish tune and a Uyghur melody, and we're going to improvise. That's how most our traditions. Actually, we do improvise based on certain melodies. strings are kind of inside is metal, outside is sometimes silk, sometimes silver and metal combination. Yeah.
Is your music written in tablature? No, it's staff, like a staff notation.
You mean my?
Yeah, the pipa music.
The pipa music in the old time is like a tablature.
Yeah.
Yeah, we read from top to the bottom, from the right to the left. So like that. But the oldest pipa string goes back to 1,500 years ago, but we lost the knowledge of how to interpret it. Yeah. The Dunhuang notation from Buddhist temple, from the northwest China, it's also the tablature. We tried to interpret, but it's coming out with a lot of different interpretations, mainly on the rhythm, so the notes, because it's only 4 or 5 frets on the top. So it's still existing now. Yeah. Nowadays, we use mostly commonly used for Chinese musician in the folk sector. We call it jianpu. It's numerical, like 1 to 7 represent C to B. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Was it a challenge to get all of these instruments to play in tune together? Because aren't there different tuning systems across that space between China and Europe? How did you arrange to play all these instruments together?
Yes. You want to answer? That's a very good question, because in this nowadays, all the instruments are trying to coherent and to be in the same system as learning from West, like the pipa note, the frets. We used to only have from 5 to 10 to 12 to add all the way up. So now it's actually in the ecosystem, 12 ecosystem arrangement. But we do a lot of sort of push and pull. So we could get that in between sound or even Arabic, sort of quarter tones, by just control how this kind of shade. Yes, very good question. This group actually come together is kind of very naturally during a Chinese festival a year ago, so because we wanted to play some Silk Road music. So we have the SOAS people, me and Shohret and Ozan, we all based at SOAS. We said we will try to play together, and we discovered quite a lot of lutes in London who are available, so we can group them together, and without really too much consideration whether these instruments are compatible or not as a group. So we just play naturally, and we haven't actually had many chances to perform. This is actually our second time to perform together, isn't it? So actually, Ozan just flew from Turkey yesterday, especially for this concert. So we actually haven't had too much time to rehearse. We hope we have more opportunity to play together. And also we learn how to, from each other's culture, how we can best represent the tonality and the character of each system. We learned something from you about those very specific F of 4th tone and 7th, and in 3 different layers of shade of just one note. Yeah. It's hard, and so, and also the beginning. Yeah, I will imitate. So I just try to get this. Yeah, how do you do it? Yeah, how do you do this?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I have the luxury of sliding, so I can just. Yeah.
So all of these are not exactly the same, but it creates different flavors and bonding in a great harmony somehow.
Yeah, good. So actually, me and Shohret instruments are easy to play high notes because we have lots of and the wood and
Almost as a high
also
bass.
yeah, oh yeah, and wood and nice to have a theorbo to play the sort of a supporting and the chords and lower sound. I think it works. Because the Silk Road started from China, also all the way went to Europe. So it's actually linked. All these Lute family have a very close connections from one another. And we have a kind of its similarity, yet very distinctive from each own culture, history, and its background, and so forth.
Can I also say something? Because as a human being, no, we also need to put labels and names, to everything. Otherwise, we get in panic. But eventually, it's just string, wood. I mean, eventually they are just instrument. And we are always talking about music style, music style, music style. I mean, but that's bullshit. Eventually, music. I mean. All this music style has some, I don't know, characteristic or whatever, but eventually it just I'm using instrument sounding, so you just need to find someone with a sensitivity, in order to connect, to put everything together. And here in London, I mean, because usually, for example, in South Spain, there is no way you can play with a musician from China, another from Turkey, another, everyone, I mean, I think 90% of people are Spaniards, so there is not much you can do. But here in London, we are, we are so lucky that we can play with people from all around the world, and then you learn this lesson, I mean, that there is no such a thing as a music style that is not true, it's music, and that's it. You just need to find the common way, I don't know, and that's it, and you put everything together, and I mean, you can see, well, hopefully you can listen to it. You just listen right now. I mean, it's just music. We don't need to put label. Chinese music, Turkish music, Greek music, Spanish music. I mean, it's all the same, just music.
Have you tried playing each other's instruments?
I tried playing a dutar in Uzbekistan, and it's very difficult coming from the dombra.
I did try to play the wood. I found it quite hard because I use fingers and you use the pick. And because my lines, I have the frets that give you a specific pitch, but for that, actually, you need to hear and get the correct. Yeah, it's very interesting, very different. Although it's Lutes family, so this fretted lutes and flat non-fret lutes are a very different plucking technique and flavor. Yeah.
find it's a very interesting and striking difference. All of you have these little tuning pegs, but you have great big. Why?
What was your question? My tuning pegs are huge.
The little tuning,
Yeah.
there's great big
Yeah.
kinds of tuning.
Yeah, how it's because the pipa are tuned, like some are, we push the string really hard sometimes. So we need to really hold the string very steady. Sometimes if it's out of tune in the middle of the performance, it's quite hard. So I used to, I often put the sand paper to make it rougher and put some chalks and before performance to hold the steadily. Yeah, I don't know, it's always big.
Could I say something about the pegs on these instruments? The Kazakhs, first with the notation, until the 1920s, 30s, 40s, in Kazakhstan there was actually no notation. It was all oral tradition, you learned from a teacher. That changed with the Soviets coming in and creating a sort of like Sovietized musical culture around Almaty. But the thing about all of these lutes, including the pipa with the large beak, the Kazakhs name the parts like we do, neck and so, but actually the pegs are called ears. And I always think it's very charming that probably in all of these languages, the names of the instruments are very humanized. Yeah, so there's no specific name for this in Kazakh. The name is ear. And it's very simple, like the little the frets are made from string, from nylon, but these little breaks, and the breaks are just called stick and button. And so I think it is really, these are very ancient instruments, however far developed they are. And I think the bass root is somewhere really in ancient times. And, like I said, in Kazakhstan there are petroglyphs of people playing and dancing to a dombra, to a lute of some kind. And I'm sure across the world, in Turkey, I know there are some in Turkey. There are also some in North Africa, depictions of these instruments. So I think that, this is particularly simple. It's just the same, a stick with two strings, which is made from one long string. But the reverberation in the human soul of the lute instruments, I think, is quite spectacular. And I think, well, you're all lutists, of whatever kind. And yeah, I think the strings that reverberate, a bit like what Antonio was saying, like, it's just music, and it's in the soul. Kazakhs believe in that very strongly. They actually think it's good for healing. This instrument and a bowed instrument called the kulbas, but people believe it. I believe it too. It's when you play this, it really does heal you, and it makes you forget about things like politics and Trump. So, yeah.
I think my instrument is quite heavy because it's different from others because you hardly can see a sound hole. This back is the kind of whole piece, and it's kind of a heavy rosewood and often covered with different motifs. This is a dragon motif, and that's why the pipa sounds quite, penetrating, quite. In the old time, we call it jin shi. So jin is like metal, shi is like stone. You need to project this kind of sound. So that's how the pipa is known for its very expressive power of martial piece or choir civil piece.